Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the June 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Rappahannock Regional Commission. I want to thank Ms. Schaefer and the town of Warrenton for putting us here for our first in-person meeting in quite some time. And it's a wonderful space. And for those who took the tour, we had a perfect day for it. And I'm sorry that I missed it, but thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Just real quick, the restroom is right out here. You can just walk to the door. It's unlocked. If you need any chargers, they're in the center of the table. I'm looking at my notes. And if you need Wi-Fi, it's on a little tent here. And any other questions? Ms. Harris is back there in the back, and she has arranged everything for you today. So I would love to take credit for it, but she's worked hard. She's excited to have you here as well. So thank you all for coming.
There's some wonderful materials here as well that I've been taking, so if you guys want some more information about that, that's okay. If I can direct everybody's attention to the little bitty flag on top of the monitor there, the Pledge of Allegiance.
One thing that I forgot. Not so
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a roll call.
Mr. Ashby, Mr. Butler, Mayor Catlin, Mayor Coiner.
Here.
Mr. Crozier.
Here.
Mr. Curry.
Here.
Mr. Deal.
Here.
Ms. Donahue. Mr. Eggertson.
Here.
Mr. Hively.
Here.
Mr. Hobbs.
Here.
Ms. Hoffman. Mayor Lamar. Mr. McCullough.
Here.
Mayor Roby.
Here.
Ms. Schaefer.
here.
Mayor Sisson. Ms. Sutphin.
Here.
Ms. Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Voorhees.
Here.
Mr. Woods.
Here.
We do have a quorum in person.
Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? If there's nothing, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone from the public mention anything to you?
There were no comments received before the meeting.
Anyone here wish to speak? All right, moving on then. First item on our agenda is a presentation on a new potential funding opportunity via the PDC Housing Development Grant Program from Virginia Housing. Mr. John Payne is over here. He is the Strategic Housing and Program Implementation Officer. And he's with us to provide an update on Virginia Housing and this new program. I'm sure he's got a lot of wonderful information for us, and I know a lot of you have questions about this. Mr. Payne, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here today, and I'll try to be succinct so that the time is valuable enough. So, to begin with, just as a matter of background, I'm a licensed architect in Virginia. I've been doing affordable housing for over 40 years. I started out working for an architect in Middleburg and thought I was going to do the rich and famous houses, and found a job in Fairfax County that paid a little bit more, and ended up having a career with the Fairfax County Redevelopment Housing Authority. And then upon retirement, I've been working with Virginia Housing for about 6 years in a consultant kind of contract basis. So you kind of have the B team member here today and filling in for some of our members that are on vacation. A quick word about Virginia Housing. It's the lead agency in the Commonwealth that deals with finance for affordable housing. We do home ownership loans, first-time home buyer loans. We do multifamily financing. We run the low-income housing tax credit program. And it does not take in any state funds to operate. It actually manages on its own ability to provide loans and financing. As a matter of background. So how do we get to where we are today with providing this opportunity for the regional commissions to actually implement some affordable housing activities? And I think it's important to realize that one of the things that we've been doing is reaching out to the regional commissions throughout the Commonwealth to help them with strategic planning of their areas. And in fact, in December 2020 was released the thing that I'm sure you're all familiar with, the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Housing Study. And there are a lot of conclusions there, but I think there's a lot of information that people don't realize is how important housing is to the economic development of our counties and cities and towns. And so in following the pattern of helping regional commissions do the studies and recognizing the need, the secondary thing was, that's great, but where's the money? And so that's where Virginia Housing and its Board of Commissioners and its leadership staff came up with the concept of actually developing affordable units, putting out money to the regional commissions as the intermediary between its partners in the localities to actually create more units. And so this opportunity is based on population of the regional commission. Regional commissions over 600,000 are getting up to $3 million. Those below are basically getting $2 million. It was a sort of rushed in kind of toward the end of the fiscal year to deal with getting the applications in. And I know a lot of regional commissions have questions about what does it mean for them? What are the responsibilities? What are the outcomes? What are the metrics that we're expected to adhere to? And as a program that came about pretty rapidly, I think that there's some flexibility. We're going to find out more as the questions come back to you. And that's part of the reason I'm here today, is to give you the basis of information and then also to take back some questions and also concerns and attitudes about what may be possible and what might not be possible. So the Planning Commission, district commissions, one of the things that we're trying to do, and go to the next slide if you don't mind turning it. Oh, I got it. There we go. Okay. I apologize because it's only been almost 2 years since we've been in a public forum to speak. So I think we're all a little nervous about this. So the three things that we're trying to do is promote regional approaches to housing projects and programs, planning and development. Enhance collaboration between the regional and local organizations comprising the housing delivery network, and strengthen the PDC's capacity to address housing opportunities identified in statewide studies. So this is exactly what I'm saying. Affordable housing has been studied to death. You can go to almost any community and it's a problem nationwide, worldwide. And the big issue is the availability of income for the individuals trying to have housing and the cost of housing being constructed. And as we know, particularly in the Northern Virginia region, major parts of the Commonwealth, land is increasingly becoming difficult to acquire and own. And so we're looking for alternatives of ways of financing this. And that's why we're going to the next idea of how do we get the money to projects that really could provide affordable housing. So in a snapshot, we've received applications from all the PDCs throughout the Commonwealth. And it's targeted as a 30-month process, rather intensely, to produce affordable housing. And it's sort of two tiers. There's one tier for those organizations that have not necessarily worked with a housing provider and need to really identify the housing provider, people that could actually develop the housing. And so there's a little more time involved in working with the community, developing ideas about who those organizations are, what they might be able to do in the local communities. That's called our tier one. And then there's a second tier, which is tier two. And that's really more for communities that might be in metropolitan areas that have been used to having affordable housing providers always asking for money. Northern Virginia, that would be some of your faith-based community organizations. Originally were faith-based, but now they're strictly, totally nonprofit organizations, and many of them operate like businesses. This would be the Wesley Housing, Arlington Housing Corporation, APA is another one. So there are a number of organizations, Northern Virginia. And as you go throughout the state, Commonwealth, there are other organizations that provide affordable housing regionally. But they're not so much in the smaller communities. Habitat for Humanity has a pretty strong following in a lot of the communities, but they're even having difficulty with locating property. And in some cases, they've gone more towards a model of revitalization of existing houses and home repair. So the idea behind this concept is to take begin a process where you start to identify actually organizations that can implement this. We're not asking the regional commissions to implement it. We're asking you to give guidance and give direction. And how do you identify the organizations that could benefit from $100,000 per unit to make housing affordable? And that's the maximum that's going to be allowed in this program. So as the regional commission under 600,000 and certainly well above the 99,000 threshold, the organization's open to $2 million worth of affordable housing resources. And this would be with a limit of $100,000 per unit. So that would be 20 units to be produced within a 3-year period. And the application process, everyone got in under the guidelines of the timing for it. The next question is, what happens next? So the Board of Commissioners of the Virginia Housing will make an award of this. Then that award will translate into a document that will come forward to the Regional Commission. The Regional Commissions will adopt that as agreeing to the terms of the conditions of the application. And then there's a period of time to process do this process of identifying partners to work with, and then taking sort of, for lack of a better term, having an RFP to say who's eligible, who's willing to do the guidelines within which you establish to produce housing and be awarded this grant. So there are a couple of things that are, I think, particularly interesting to some of the smaller communities that are represented in your regional commission. Mixed-use projects are allowed, and believe it's correct in saying that the incomes have to be under 80%. So examples would be the apartments over storefronts in smaller communities where they might want to redevelop those into affordable units. The incomes would have to be under 80%, but only a percentage of that, I think it's 50% of the units produced would have to be under 80%. So it could provide an economic opportunity to redevelop upstairs of apartments in some of the smaller towns. And we know that that's been an issue as transition has happened in a lot of areas. Some of them have been redeveloped completely, but this is one opportunity that it might be available for smaller units.
What's considered affordable when it says must be affordable?
80% is the median income of the community. And actually, that's a good segue probably for this next slide.
I was more interested in what does remain mean?
So this gives you, I hope you can see this, but, and I'll just at least read it off. So as an example, you can see the third column down on the left, fourth area is Culpeper, Rappahannock, and Warren counties. And these are household incomes for purchasing of a property. And those income limits are roughly, for Culpeper, 73,000 for 2 people or fewer. 92,000 for the standard. And then there are other programs within this, within Virginia Housing that can provide additional assistance. Some of the first-time buyers grants that come forward, as well as there's a mortgage credit program that can help assist home buyers. So the upper limit for purchase of a house would be 450,000 in the Culpeper, Rappahannock, Warren area. And there's a qualification a little below that. All other areas of Virginia are 84,000, and the top price for that house would be 270,000. So the incomes, these are based on two-person incomes. Normally, when you talk about affordable housing, people use the reference of four-person household. What is the median income? And then you actually say, what is 80% of that? And that would provide you with some of the guidance about who can afford what.
Is there any consideration being given with the escalating prices this past year of raising that? Because the entry-level home in Orange County, known the eastern end, is now for a townhome above 300,000. It's just, it knocks these people on a normal day, just in competitiveness, it knocks them out. But now, even with assistance, they're totally out of the game.
I'm pretty sure that this is reviewed annually. And so I don't know what the cycle is in terms of fiscal year or calendar year, but I'm sure it will be reassessed. But the difficulty, that could be the maximum value, but that's based on median income. So the median incomes have to reflect that now. That's another whole world of change that's taking place that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic, with people moving out of some of the inner suburbs to more rural areas with the income levels. And so all that's going to play into this as well. But the real need, and we all know this, is the 30 to 50% range. You know, the cashiers, the landscapers, the sales people in stores, the restaurant workers, the whole range of activities. And why is all this critical? And it's probably been further enhanced by 3 years ago when Amazon was trying to come to Virginia. Really sort of one of the turning points was Virginia Housing provided opportunities to provide affordable housing grants to assist some of the nonprofits in the area to develop housing. Well, now Amazon itself is putting, I think, lending money to do affordable housing. So it's becoming a real economic issue in terms of tools. And I'm sure that if you speak to any of your economic development authorities, one of the critical elements is where are the employees going to live, especially if it's any kind of moderate income product that people are producing, or any business coming in trying to do moderate income employment. They want to know, are there opportunities for employees to live there? So, and this is all part of sort of the Virginia Housing Strategic Plan of identifying where are the problems in affordable, how can they assist, how can they develop it further. And so this is, there are a lot of moving parts in it. To develop affordable housing is not a simple problem. It starts with land use, it starts with financing, it starts with incomes of individuals. And so we're trying to make a dent in this by creating a new network of people working on this problem. I think there's hope that this would develop into a longer term strategy, but right now it's focused on this initial output of money that is being provided through the net return of the sort of profits, if you will, of our lending over the years being reinvested into the communities by providing these grants. And likewise, when we lend this money to the, give this money to the regional commissions, it's hoped that you will then leverage, as part of your conditions of lending this money out, that there'll be a way to leverage this money so that it can revolve in some form. That may not always be possible, but that's the goal, because we've seen that when that works, it can actually produce more units in the long run, and it's a better investment. So I think that probably gets pretty close to my presentation. I wanted to mention that I work with Jill Norcross, who's our Community Outreach Regional Manager for Northern Virginia. In Richmond, they kind of consider that stopping at the Prince William, Loudoun County lines, but as a resident of Manassas and having been born across the road here, the old building next to the courthouse, I consider a lot of the region that you're representing really impacted by Northern Virginia, particularly as jobs move outside of Washington into the outer suburbs. And we've seen that kind of growth. Where I'm a resident in Manassas, I think the population is approaching 450,000 people in the Prince William County area. And you're having a similar 20% growth since 2005, I believe, or maybe a little later. But with the exception of perhaps Rappahannock and Madison counties, all of you are facing growth and making decisions at your level about regional planning and actually local planning. And the concept behind this goal and this grant is to come to you to get ideas, what works in your community, not to tell you what works, but to get ideas and see how you want to try to solve the problem. And to take this back to Virginia Housing, and my role as a sort of an outreach is to take the ideas and concepts and questions back to the home office and advocate for you to make these programs more functional. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I'll try to answer any questions, but I will start by saying if I don't have the question answered today, I'll try to answer to you in the future by going back and asking for more details. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So is this grant and this appropriation you're talking about, is that going to be combined with the tax credit program for developers as well?
Yes, people can use it, the tax credit program. And in addition, we have a pre-development loan program. We also have other REACH funds that might come towards this. We also have a community impact grant, which can help, which is what funded the strategic housing plan that you have for community outreach, engagement, that type of thing. So it's not exclusive of that. It's not meant to replace any of those funds that may be already allocated or in process, but the idea is to produce more units and to use this money primarily for construction. So some of the other money will be used to help assist in the process.
So to follow up on that then, so it does come down to zoning or support from the local jurisdiction for the areas that you can develop low income or mid-income housing, because from a tax credit standpoint, a lot of the jurisdictions have areas to where they don't allow tax credit projects unless it's a blighted area. So that's what you're talking about as far as zoning and going in and looking at each jurisdiction, having to look at those areas to see where they're willing to allow this type of development?
No, it wouldn't require tax credit as part of funding. We believe that there's a lot of opportunities in some areas where you can produce fewer units. It wouldn't have to be 20 all at once. It could be 5 and 4 and 9, 2 more, 3, whatever. It doesn't have to be. What I'm saying is that it can be used with the tax credit program if a developer is going through that. Just as a point of reference, the 9% tax credits, there's almost a threshold of having to produce somewhere above 60 units to make it cost effective because of the amount of legal fees involved and the distribution of the tax credits and ensuring that it's operated properly. So in many cases, this may not be applicable to using it as a tax credit. It may be assisting a nonprofit that has excess land where its headquarters is and would like to build some townhouses or rental units. It's a whole spectrum of ideas behind this that could be developed. And we're here to get the phone call and try to help you figure out how it might work or not work and what we can do to assist in producing affordable housing.
But what I'm saying is the local jurisdiction is going to have to buy into the location that's being looked at, correct? Because in the tax credit program, if you don't get the support letter from the local jurisdiction, then it won't work in the tax credit program.
Right.
Is that the same way it's going to be with this program?
It's not requiring a local support as far as I'm aware of. But it's a great question. I'll have to make sure to verify that, but I have not heard that discussed at all. And our community impact grants, any of our REACH funds, as far as I know, do not require that. And the tax credit program, I think it's technically not a requirement, but if you don't have that letter, the number of points that you get for that letter make it almost impossible to compete with other organizations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, or perhaps Mr. Payne, how does the commission fit into the process? What is trying to understand from the memo?
All right, that's what I was gonna say. If anybody has any more questions for Mr. Payne, I know Patrick has got some information in the packet and would go over from the staff perspective what we're looking at.
Sure. So to Mr. Curry's question, the grant program is set up to where PDCs are the only eligible applicants. And so the way that it's been broached and explained to us is that we would basically serve as facilitators. We'd have this pool of money that would support our going through, I think in the first 6 to 9 to 12 months of kind of setting up the structure and answering questions such as Mr. Deal's question right there about, I don't envision any project that would potentially get funded through this program not having local support. I think that the role of the commission is to engage nonprofit developers, other developers that may have interest in such a program, and having a funding source that would be able to be shown to them and say, if you have interest and if you have a project that meets the requirements of the program you're willing to sign on, then we can defray some of those costs per units. I don't see a way for a project to go forward through this program or frankly without that local support and the developer being, working with the local government to say, here's the site, here's what we want to do, here's the number of units, here's this other funding source that we can use to defray some of our costs and also leverage, whether it's tax credits or additional funding that the developer might bring. The way that other PDCs have talked about this, there's really one planning district commission in the state, and that's on the Eastern Shore, which serves as staff for their housing authority. They are going to probably take this money and build houses themselves because they do that. Everyone else is sort of looking at this as, okay, we have a pot of money where most of us are engaged in these discussions with on housing and with local governments primarily. If this is a resource that can be brought into the region and that can support something that the commission supports, but more so that the local government say is an important issue, then it's a funding source, and we would have that ability to sort of manage that process and build that engagement. The other thing I would point out is that one of the things that I feel pretty good about this program is that there's a cap of you can't get past 80, you can't request more than 85% of the money until you get to a point of phase 8, which is the pre-development phase. So setting the structure up and the staff time that we'll spend and the engagement process that we'll do, and if you get to an RFP process of saying which developers might be interested, whether it's nonprofit developers, whether it's Habitat for Humanity that's active in Fauquier County, most especially in our region, if they're interested, I think we can go through all of that process. And I have very little concern that part wouldn't be, we wouldn't be reimbursed for all of that. Even if we get to the point where there's not a project that's going to go forward here, I don't think that would cost, it wouldn't take a lot of the money out of the $2 million to do that. So I feel like that's one of the reasons in the conversations with Chair Taylor, because as Mr. Payne said, we did submit an application. The way it was explained to us as staff was that pre-application that you're putting in, you're indicating your interest mostly again for Virginia Housing's fiscal year budget, so that they kind of had a sense of who's interested. If they had 3 PDCs that were interested in 18 that said no thanks, they'd probably say this probably is a good program. But I think all 21 of us said we're interested in seeing where this might go. And at this point, I think that's what's kind of being presented to you all today is what are some of the questions that are going to come up and that we need to answer before we fully commit to kind of going through this process.
So can you confirm what is the dollar value available to our region for this?
$2 million. Okay. Over 3 years, 36 months. There was one thing that said if you got to a point in the development phase, you need an extra 12 months to get the units built, then that's available too. So that would be, and I think, budget wise, in terms of what we've looked at internally, I think it's we would want to fund a staff position with this to manage the program. We'd want to hold most of that 2 million back to, offset those costs, because it's not going to go, $2 million is not going to build 20 units. It can offset some of the costs for that, but as much as we can, we'd like to be able to keep as much of that money available to the developers themselves, if that works.
One other question, Patrick. Would the funds be available to a developer if they proffer a normal ADU dwelling unit program? Say they build 100 residential houses and they're proffering a certain percentage of affordable dwelling units. Would those funds be available from that perspective?
My sense is yes. Mr. Payne might have
I think the main thing is that it's oriented to creating additional housing, and that would be a housing unit that would be available already. It may not be built, but it's going to be. So that might be one issue I'm not sure of, and I'll check into that. Since it's a land use issue and it's been proffered effectively, you're going to get that unit at some point in time. Now, if they proffered at 80% and that there was a subsidy to drop it down to a lower level, we've done that in the past with other programs where we've assisted lowering the income threshold so that it's even more affordable to an individual. Whether that's possible or not, I can't answer that, but I will take that question back. It's a great question.
Okay. And what does the term remain affordable mean?
the 30-year period that it would remain.
Is that deed restriction? How does that work?
Is that something that Virginia Housing has a set?
Normally this is done through like the tax credit program. But I don't know how long, what the requirements are for that. So that's a really great question, how it will be enforced. I think the concept is that it would be, typically they're like 30-year easements on it, but I haven't heard any discussion on that, so I don't know the answer, what the long-term strategy is then.
When we've done low-income stuff, it's been a note with that includes that provision, and then also a deed of trust that includes it, and then they have to meet through it before we would release the lien then at that time.
And one of the areas with the affordable dwelling units that's often used is a covenant or an easement, where then a portion of the funds are repaid, and then you can reinvest that money into another opportunity. So particularly with home ownership, that's done quite often. But I do not think that there's anything in the application currently about how to maintain that affordability for what length of time.
Right, the 30 years has been included, but I think a lot of that would be this process of setting up the program regionally. I don't think there's a one size fits all that Virginia Housing said, here's what you have to do. I think, to be perfectly honest, we would rely on Virginia Housing's expertise in that to provide some of that background. And also just to see how other regional commissions are going through this and what they sort of go through. But I don't think it's specified at this point what that looks like.
Anyone else have anything?
How does it play in, maybe this is something everyone else understands, but you were talking about townhomes or mixed use type development. So is it just ownership based, or?
Oh, no.
So it can be rentals. So is there any consideration for how accessory dwelling units will play into this, a granny flat situation? Are you going to allow anything like that within the program, as that seems to be kind of an opportunity in more suburban areas of adding in more affordable housing that is smaller and more integrated into the fabric of the community than just, standalone type of stuff? So has there been any consideration for accessory dwelling units?
Not to my knowledge, but one of the difficulties with accessory dwelling units, back to the question about enforcing longevity of the requirement, meaning that if you had a unit that's on a property that's homeowner owns the property and is renting that unit, the enforcement would have to go with the ownership of the property. So I don't think that's been discussed, but the idea that accessory dwelling units is a great way to solve the housing crisis is is acknowledged. And we're working with some of the communities with how they finance this right now, because it is a difficult situation with maintaining that within the longevity of affordable. So I'll definitely raise that question though, and hopefully we'll have an answer back for you.
Yeah, I just would point out that it's part of a lot of what came out of your other studies that jurisdictions should be doing. So it would be great when advocating for that the funding sources also line up with that policy application. And then because the zoning is going to restrict the square footage of that as a percentage of the size of the primary structure, it's always inherently going to be a little bit more affordable than, say, a standalone mixed use unit that would transfer over or change over time. So it might be one of those things that long-term is a little bit more self-regulating, and to the point that Paul made about the deed restriction on the overall lot. So just, I think it's a great opportunity for this region to look at options.
I know that our homeownership division is actually looking at this to some level. How can you finance an accessory dwelling unit with a homeownership loan and to ensure its affordability? So I'll raise the question how does it interface with this particular grant?
One other thing I'll say in response to that too is that the calls we've had with Virginia Housing just explaining the program, I think ideas like that, just bringing them up, I think they're sort of saying, be innovative, bring us your ideas, talk to us about what might be possible. And if it, for some reason doesn't work through this one, then, putting that in front of them is important at this point too. I think we've talked a lot about, the potential for, tiny houses or, pocket neighborhoods, things like that, may not be something that's prevalent here in the region or frankly across a lot of Virginia, but this is potentially an opportunity for something like that as well. Again, if the locality was supportive and if you had a developer that could make it work.
Patrick, could you just, if the commission decides to go forward with this, outline what the structure would look like from staff as far as who would do this, how this would work?
Right. I think one of the things we've looked at in your packet, and I'll pull it up here on the screen too. The attachment, if we're definitely, as Mr. Payne kind of outlined, we are definitely a track 1 region. We do not have housing development experience. And as I said, I think there's probably 1 or 2 PDCs that might fit track 2. What we see here and kind of using the phase development that they've outlined in the guidance document here, those first 3 phases from program design to developing an investment plan or finding those partners, and then that partnership development phase 3, they've outlined here that happening in the first 5 to 7 months. I think that's probably a 6 to 9 month process for us. I think, certainly within staff, we've got some existing capacity to do that, but I think I would feel much more comfortable if there was a guiding body of the commission, whether it's the executive committee or a different subcommittee that might have particular interest in housing and housing development if we were to move forward. Just because I think, the commission meets every 2 months, I anticipate this is going to be a body that probably needs to meet more frequently than that. Again, for a 6 to 9 to 12 month period here, just to kind of guide this as we go through what this program might look like. The other piece sort of running in parallel and building off of the housing study is we had pretty good engagement on the housing study with local government staff and a few elected officials from local governments. I think what we've seen amongst staff internally is that in follow-up to that, we see that sort of being the springboard towards a parallel work group that would kind of provide technical assistance or advisory information on some of these issues that we're seeing in the region. So I think what we would propose to develop is a made up of local government staff, some of the nonprofit housing developers that we've worked with and that participated in the study. So that's Fakir Habitat for Humanity, People Incorporated, a couple other community development corporations, Skyline CAP, and Foothills Housing Corporation, just to name the ones that are at the top of my mind right now. I think just to provide, frankly, that technical advice that we internally have some knowledge of what happens, but on the development side, that's not something the commission has really been involved in. And so I think having their advice and knowing what questions to ask, and also providing, again, executive committee or another subcommittee people to go to that can provide some of those answers, or that staff can rely on to sort of get those through. I think it's sort of how we've, at least initially, kind of worked through what this might look like for the first year, running through that structural and setup phase that's sort of outlined there. So again, I sort of, because of my having seen how the commission works, a lot of times executive committee is the one that's asked to do those sorts of things, but I also wanted to leave that open if there were others that would be interested or would have the desire to serve on that as well, just to put that out. That's the way I would recommend moving forward with it.
It sounds like the output could be very broad and a program could be designed to fit a very diverse region, and something that could work in Rappahannock and still work in Warrenton. And so, I think it's worthwhile to at least invest the time to get this set up, so long as if we do have administrative costs and it doesn't go any further, is that a financial issue for us?
No, and to be perfectly clear, page 10 here, that the allowable costs here, this is a very workable process for us. All of our staff time, salary, fringe, our indirect costs, which frankly we've not had a discussion at the commission level, but our indirect costs, some grants are moving away from allowing those without a lot of work on our part. So those things are all allowable costs, and it's a quarterly reimbursement. So I would think we have a pretty good sense of the time we're spending on it. And if we ran into those issues, we'd know about it. I also know that, we've invested in the kind of part-time planner that we've had on board since October, has been doing a lot of work on housing already. So this is a way to sort of defray some of those costs that we've been.
But if we go through 9 months and develop a program and then decide this isn't for us, we're still going to be refunded for all those expenses.
That is the way I read this, the guidance here, especially because they, again, on section 2.6, the restrictions, no more than 85% of the award may be requested prior to completion of phase 8. So I take that to mean if we're making progress on phases 1, 2, and 3 over the first 6 months, I have no doubt that we'll be reimbursed for that. I think going into it with our eyes open in terms of, we see this going somewhere, and we're making doing our best to set this up. I think if we get to that point and it's determined that the commission turns, it's not really something that seems like it's going to work, I don't feel like we'll be out and covering that ourselves.
So if you have 5 jurisdictions, 5 counties or 5 jurisdictions, and you have $2 million feasibly, that's 40 units that you could pay the tap fees of $10,000 if the average tap fee was $10,000.
Right.
For 40 units per jurisdiction, if you have 5 jurisdictions.
So, and that would be something that I think that the subcommittee would need to work through. Is this something where we're trying to be equal across jurisdictions? Is this something where we're trying to get a project or 2 projects that, sort of give us the best value based on what a developer or nonprofit organization brings in? I think that's part of that setup phase, is figure out,
That's just an example.
No, I agree. And that is something that was discussed amongst, with Virginia Housing on some of the calls, was, those tap fees, because we know that it can be a burden for developers and some of that, and that at least so far appears to be an allowable cost too, and all use of some of this money as well. So.
But given the off-ramp, I'm happy to make the requested action authorizing the executive director to execute a contractual agreement with Virginia Housing for this program. And it seems appropriate to me to have the executive committee do this, but unless some other committee steps forward, that executive committee could assign said committee.
The motion?
Yes, sir.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay. Do we need a voice, or can we get a?
I think voice vote is fine. I think voice vote is fine. We need a roll call.
Okay. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Payne, very much for your.
Thank you very much. And we'll be available to talk at any point in time if you have any further questions, and the information's on the sheet. We'll be glad to continue the dialogue. Thank you
Terrific.
very much.
Thank you. Okay, Next, we have a resolution for Mr. Hobbs, our Madison County rep. As you may know, Mr. Hobbs is leaving the county area, I guess. Right? So, yeah.
Riding off into the sunset.
Sunrise.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's
But,
right, sunrise. It's not Sunrise Beach.
We have both there.
But I'd like to recognize you for your 4 years. I guess it's been 4 years here. Is that correct?
And
If you round up, yes.
yeah,
Very good. Well, thank you so much.
you want me to read this into the?
Please
Sure.
do, yes.
All right. So this is a resolution recognizing the work and service of Jack Hobbs. Whereas the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission serves the counties of Culpeper, Fauquier, Madison, Orange, and Rappahannock, and the towns of Culpeper, Gordonsville, Madison, Orange, Remington, the Plains, Warrenton, and Washington, known as Planning District 9. And whereas Mr. Jack Hobbs was appointed to the commission by the County of Madison in October 2017. And whereas Mr. Hobbs served on the commission from the time of his appointment until June 2021. And whereas Mr. Hobbs served in a leadership role as a member of the RRRC Executive Committee from March 2018 until June 2021. And whereas Mr. Hobbs worked diligently and enthusiastically with fellow members of the commission to advance the mission of the commission and to enhance coordinated planning across the Rappahannock-Rapidan region, and to enhance the commission's work and interaction with Madison County by engaging commission staff for technical assistance in support of the county comprehensive plan, solid waste plan, transportation initiatives, and broadband planning, and also as an active voice in support of other priorities of the commission. Now therefore be it resolved that the commission hereby recognizes Mr. Jack Hobbs and extends its sincere appreciation for his dedicated service and contributions to the commission and the Rappahannock-Rapidan region.
Here, here.
And Mr. Voorhees stole my sunset joke, so.
No, this is very nice, and thank you so much. I know that those of you that know me know that I've got a long history with planning district commissions from back in the day. I think I remember when they were first being formed in the late 60s. And so I've watched the show for many years. They don't have planning district commissions as such in North Carolina. I understand they have what they call councils of government. So a little bit different, but more the same. But enjoyed it. Enjoyed the good work that Patrick and his crew are doing, and keep up the good work.
Well. Okay, minutes. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes from previous meetings? Any changes, corrections, anything?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion is second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now on to the financial reports. If you could review the year-to-date financial report, and especially those that are addressing the proposed budget amendment.
Yeah, one budget amendment, I think I promised in April not to bring one, but we had a late request from just to serve as a fiscal agent on a single transaction for the town of Washington in the amount of $36,630.58. That money came in and went out actually on the same day, so it does necessitate a budget amendment before the end of the fiscal year. What you'll see just in terms of the overall budget is that, revenues through the end of May, and so that town of Washington money was received in June, so it doesn't show up as revenue yet other than as an adjustment, but revenues through the end of May, 94%, our expenses are lower than that at 79%. Most of the main drivers on the expense side, payroll and benefits, those are tracking just as we would expect. Primarily, it's in operating costs in terms of we've had very few meeting expenses this year. We've had very little advertising. We've had just decreases in some of the regular office expenses. We've also had some decreases in just project expenses that would be grant reimbursed, just that have not been used primarily with the rideshare program in terms of advertising, and just a couple of other project expenses that just have not had need to be spent this year because we haven't been holding those meetings or doing the same sort of advertising and outreach that we would in past years. So that's the main reason for the difference between revenues and expenses. We will see those expenses catch up a little bit in June, obviously with very few additional revenues coming in June. So The one change again from April, the amended budget that was adopted in April is the town of Washington pass through money there. I'm happy to answer questions on the current fiscal year budget if there are any.
If there are no questions, I guess we need a motion to adopt the amended FY21 budget.
So moved. Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Patrick, director's report.
Yeah, I just want to, once again, as Ms. Taylor did at the beginning of the meeting, just really want to thank Ms. Schaefer and Ms. Sutphin from the town of Warrenton for their hosting us today. I've had multiple of you say maybe we should move our meeting space to this location every 2 months. So once we do our circuit of the region, then maybe we'll see what we can do there. Might need to reimburse the town for their staff time because their staff has been very helpful. Ms. Denise Harris as well from the town has been very helpful today. We've currently got 2 open positions that we're advertising for. One is an AmeriCorps Vista position, which is through the Virginia Housing Alliance, in which we're hoping to have somebody in place by mid-July, and then would start in mid-August. We have an interview, I think, set up for next week on that. And then the second is the Farm to School Liaison position, which was approved in April. Had that job description advertised, I think, as of a week and a half ago. And so Michelle and I will be hopefully having some interviews on that in July as well. And happy to share that. The link is there to have the packet on the computer, but happy to have any of you share that with anyone that might be interested. Also wanted to point out, related to housing and not so much the housing development, but you may have seen in the news in Culpeper recently, there was some significant flooding from the 9-10 inches of rain that they received in 24 hours, which displaced people from the Sleepy Hollow Motel, which is in downtown. Many of those people that were displaced are being housed there currently by funding that's come to the Culpeper Housing and Shelter Services, the Culpeper Shelter, which is allowing, for non-congregate shelter. So I just want to point that out and thank Rebecca Wareham, who's not here today, but on our staff, she did a lot of great work coordinating with Chaz, but also with Culpeper Police Department in getting significant donations that would replace some of the things lost there from some of the people that were being housed at Sleepy Hollow. They're currently in other hotels. Sleepy Hollow is in the process of getting things cleaned up and put back together. We continue to work with those and try to find them permanent housing solutions. Again, with Chaz and Community Touch as well. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, if you're needing more commission stuff, there's a Rappahannock-Rapidan Food Council meeting. And we've had some discussions. I think tomorrow there's been some discussions among some of you in the region about the need for food processing. Some of that discussion may come up tomorrow, but there's also, I think, a good opportunity to engage with the Food Council as they kind of look at not only food processing, but some of the food insecurity issues that are coming through and continue to look at opportunities there. Michelle, I don't know if you've got anything, Food Council, if there's anything specific for tomorrow's meeting.
No, we're having presentations on the Carver regional efforts, both with the minority and veterans farmers and the Food Enterprise Center for the community kitchen, and also 4P Foods will be presenting on their farmer box program to feed low-income folks. And Piedmont Environmental Council will be presenting on their feed study. So there's a number of regional efforts that we're going to be looking at and moving forward, how to best support them.
Thank you. And then just the other thing I would point out in our local technical assistance, we've had a couple conversations with Rappahannock-Rapidan Health District recently, looking at ways to support, I think with, as many of you locally are looking at your American Rescue Plan funding that's coming through. The health district also has received some funding and is going to be doing some increased outreach on vaccine efforts and changing their vaccine approach from being the central location to more of a dispersed kind of walk-in setup. But also we've had some conversations with them about some of the hard to reach populations that may not be able to travel to other locations. So We've had some discussions with them on transportation, just to kind of identify areas where they might be targeted there. And the other piece is that they don't really have the capacity internally in the health district to do a lot of GIS mapping. So there's potential there that we may look to execute an agreement with them just to provide some technical assistance in terms of mapping for some of the things they're doing. So that's one that I think, as long as I've been here, we've had indirect relationships with the health district, but I think there's some real benefit that could be achieved there as well. And I think that's all I'll highlight for today. I've certainly, if you've got questions about anything else that's in the budget report or anything else that has come up, I'm happy to kind of speak on that.
I have anything? Okay. We have some staff updates. Michelle is here to discuss the recent award from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation.
This grant has been a long time coming. We received notification of the award in early fall and then finally received the contract itself in March, I believe. So it's a 2-year project that closes in March of 2023, and the focus is really on stormwater management and implementation of the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Implementation Plan. And the funding again comes from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Small Watershed Grant. The bulk of that funding comes from EPA and general federal government funds. Our project partners for this grant, besides our regional commission, is Fauquier County, the town of Warrenton, John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District, Friends of the Rappahannock, and the Chesapeake Conservancy. So as far as funding goes, the total grant award is about $300,000, and the match, which is all in kind or leverage funds from other grants, is almost $350,000. So to RRRC, specifically to the commission, our award is $53,354, and we're providing an $18,000 match that is all in kind. Fauquier, 103, Warrenton, 113, Friends of the Rappahannock each receiving $15,000, and Chesapeake Conservancy receiving $30,000. And I'll go into the specifics about what all of this is going to do. So our project partners, their portion of the project, the bulk of the funds are going to construct 3 green stormwater best management practices and then being used to conduct outreach and education in Fauquier County School District. One of them is going into Fauquier High School, and there's still discussion as to what exactly that BMP will look like. It was originally supposed to be a constructed wetland. It may now be something called a fringe wetland, which I'd never heard of before, but we'll see what exactly that may look like in their negotiations with the school board. There'll also be 2 here in the town of Warrenton, one Garrett Street bioswale, which is a vegetated BMP. It's a more linear BMP. And then on 5th Street, a constructed wetland. So that will be a pond conversion from a dry pond to a constructed wetland. And then also the other part of the project will be to improve participation of John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District's Conservation Assistance Program, the VCAP program, which is a cost share program that provides funding mainly for homeowners, but also localities can use the program to construct stormwater best management practices. So there'll be program outreach that Friends of the Rappahannock will be assisting with, including 2 outreach events, and also providing cost share matching funds to further incentivize use of the program by homeowners. So there'll be a minimum of 5 stormwater best management practices through that program. So to try to get more interest within Fauquier County, because John Marshall does only cover Fauquier County. Okay. So the rest of the project that the actual regional commission will be doing is the Upper Rappahannock Watershed Plan Development. And this is a project that we have been working on over the last year or so through our DEQ contract, mainly to deal with this issue that there's a lack of comprehensive GIS data to spatially plan where BMPs should be located within the region. Where do we get our most bang for our buck? Where are they needed? The data is scattered amongst various state, federal, and local organizations, and there's a lot of BMP data gaps that we're trying to fill. And these are issues that came to light during the Chesapeake Bay WIP process. So previously, we've been working on developing the GIS portion of the plan with the goal to better prioritize BMP implementation by gathering existing data from all of our federal, state, and local partners, including your localities, and negotiating data sharing agreements where necessary, and then mapping them in GIS. So this is an example, essentially, of some of the work we've been putting together through our GIS staff and getting it out to our localities. Everything from zoning data to fish passage data to where stormwater and ag BMPs are on the landscape, where there's endangered species, where floodplains are, just a whole host of various data that we're putting together in GIS in one place. So the NIFWIP grant itself will then take that one step further and create a web-based BMP prioritization tool. So it's a custom GIS-based prioritization tool for urban and agricultural BMPs for the region that the Chesapeake Conservancy will be working on. They've done some of this work with ag BMPs in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and some other places. They will also be utilizing their new land cover and hydrography data that they have been funded to produce by EPA. So all of this can be then used for regional planning or also for individual site planning for conservation purposes. And then Friends of the Rappahannock will be further supplementing this effort by ground truthing stream bank data, targeted water quality monitoring, and also digitizing the region's existing livestock exclusion fencing data, working with the soil and water conservation districts. So all of these will kind of come together to be able to produce a better watershed implementation plan and GIS tool. And that's it.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Thank you. Fantastic. And then we also have the Community Challenge Grant, AARP grant, if you would like to.
Yeah, I can just,
update us.
if you remember from the April meeting, this was a $25,000 request with no match required to AARP, and hopefully we don't have too many on the live stream, I guess, because it's not really supposed to be announced yet, and it won't be announced until August, but we have received word that we will receive that funding. And one of the things that was, sort of has been talked about in terms of promoting the outreach and to, again, to remind you, one of the primary goals of this is to build awareness and conduct outreach for the volunteer driver programs in the region that we work with through the FAMS partnership and the Regional Transportation Collaborative. So one of the things that some of those partners have talked about doing is not only developing some logo and outreach materials to convey trusted partners in terms of volunteer drivers and others, but looking at doing, potentially, Main Street on Warrenton or other places throughout the region where you have opportunities where you've got benches that might have some sort of, temporary, I won't say signage, but, artwork that sort of promotes the volunteer driver programs and things like that. So I think one of the reasons that we're bringing this up today is not only because we received it, but we also want to make sure that you all are aware, and especially if there's processes that need to happen in terms of engaging local governments or permits that might be required, that we sort of have that out there so it won't be a surprise if it's something you see in the next few months. We'd also take suggestions if you have spots where you have something like that, again, a public art or temporary signage or something like that, whether it's a bench or a wall somewhere that might be a good fit for that, then we'd certainly love to hear that as well, because that'll be what they're sort of looking to do, and also look to engage with local artists that may be able to do some of that stuff as well. So excited about that, and it's a good kind of hopefully community project that will help raise some of that awareness for those programs that have been doing a lot, frankly, over the last year, even with COVID. And I think we're going to continue to rely on them in addition to some of the other transportation, transit and other options that are available in the region. So, so a happy announcement there.
Yeah. Okay. How about the regional cigarette tax? Do you have any?
I do not have an update. This was left on, I think, at sort of the request of the commission. I don't know if anyone from any of your local governments have any updates to provide for anything else. I think I said in April that it appears not to be happening at this regional commission. I leave it on until there's formal word on that.
We presented the issue to the board at their last meeting and work session. Prior to doing that, we received the commission's cost estimate. We also received a cost estimate from the Northern Virginia Cigarette Board, and their estimate was quite a bit lower than the commission's one. Our board has authorized us to begin the process of bringing forward the requisite resolutions and ordinances to do a cigarette tax and to begin the negotiation process with the Northern Virginia group. So we expect to move forward with that.
Anyone else on cigarettes?
An Orange County Board passed a resolution of interest to participate in the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission Regional Cigarette Tax Board. We haven't taken any further steps. My belief is that a lot of that will be driven by Albemarle counties having budgeted revenue beginning in January. So they're going to try to make sure that happens. It's not that complicated. Once you've got the structure in place, we will pass an ordinance setting the rate and we will appoint a member to the board. The heavy lifting will be done by the PDC staff, I guess, and the staff of the Charlottesville, who already kind of does it. So there's some cross-pollination of information there. Hopefully we'll just pass some paperwork and assign a member and then collect a check.
I got an email from that group, and Madison's in a similar situation. But the conversation was, well, you're our point of contact, Jack. Who's going to be our point of contact in July when we start having the actual discussions and meetings and all that. So I think my sense is that's getting ready to ramp up a little bit in the Charlottesville area. But obviously, Madison hasn't committed to anything on this yet.
Anyone else have anything? We need to bring this back again. Anybody want to visit this anymore? New business. First item that we have is the FY 2022 budget, which was presented back in April. And Patrick can update us on any changes that have occurred since April.
Yep, happy to do that. There are some changes from the April. Nothing, I think there was the inclusion of some potential money with the PDC Housing Development Program. And again, I think the first year of that, we're not likely to spend any money in terms of pass through to project partners. I think it'll all be our staff time in sort of setting the structure of that program up. So there's the associated, the revenues will show up there. I think I've budgeted $60,000 for that for the first year, just because of partial time, but we won't really have any expenses to speak of other than some costs internally on payroll and things like that. So the total amount for that's presented to you today is $1,377,903. That's pretty much everything that's in there is stuff that we either already have an award for or is an annual budget item that carries over year to year. And so I feel pretty comfortable with that. It's a fairly significant increase for our budget. Typically, our budget at the beginning of the year is about in and around $1 million. So we certainly have more money passing through. And a lot of that is from the NIFWIP project, the anticipated spending on that, as well as the increase in the regional transportation collaborative funding and the increase in the Department of Rail and Public Transportation grant that will give me some pass-through money. So you see there on the memo that the local dues, the 83 cents, that's about just under 11% of the budget, which is again a really good number for us. Typically that's been about 14 to 15%, which I still think is a good number, but 11 is even better. And you can see that it is about 275,000 more than the amended budget that was just approved for this current fiscal year. Expenses, on expenses, the main thing that I would highlight, and I highlighted this in April, is that the increases that we've seen from April until now are largely for payroll. So again, the part-time regional planner that we've had on staff that I anticipate, doing a lion's share of the work on the housing development program. That money is shifting, will be covered by the housing development program funding. So we do have some additional money sort of in holding place, either to replace that position or to look at other positions or to look at other things the commission may want to look at during the year in terms of contractual plans or anything else that might benefit. The other thing that I'll point out too is on benefits. We continue to be in a really good couple of years here. We have a very low VRS contribution rate because we currently have a surplus in our agency numbers for VRS. And our health insurance, I think we're on third year in a row of no increases, which is really great in terms of where we stand right now. And again, it's one of those things that every year just sort of wait to see what the percentage will be, and I anticipate at some point that will change. And then, sort of like I said, as of today, there's about 46,500 that I've not allocated yet. My strong suggestion again is either the commission identifies some priorities, or we hold those funds potentially to replace the part-time planner position, which is now covered by the PDC housing development funding based on needs that we might identify through the course of the year. It's a strange position. I mentioned to Chair Taylor when we met last week that I don't recall ever really having that option, but it's a good place to be in terms of where our finances stand right now, to sort of have a little bit of a cushion. And recognizing that $46,000 is not a big cushion where most of you are looking at your budgets, but for us, it's a fairly big deal. So I would again suggest that we kind of hold those as potential core matching funds for grants that's outlined there, or for some of the uses that I've just talked about. So you can see the changes there from April until now is the additional revenue for both of the Farm to School Liaison grants from the Faith Foundation and Oak County, Virginia, the two programs that we just talked about, Housing Development and Community Challenge Grant. And then the additions there were mostly in payroll, and then some project grants for the community challenge and the regional tourism expenses that are actually carryover from this current year. So I'm happy to answer any questions. The other one thing that I would sort of show you is just the source of revenue, just so you have a sense. We're in the federal is about 40% of our budget. Some of that is passed through to the state. So some of the contracts we have with state agencies that are actually federal funding. But then again, even with our local project specific funds, which is the tourism and the regional housing support that all of you are so have kindly funded for the last 5 years, that's about 15% of our budget. And I think represents a pretty good return in terms of what we're able to bring in from other sources as well. So happy to answer questions on that or provide other information if you feel like you need it at this point.
Patrick, I know some people may get tired of hearing me bring this up, but we need to make sure that we do keep staff salaried at appropriate levels. And rather than what has happened in the past, it's been a hit and a miss. I would like to see where we actually have a plan going forward for the staff salaries. And, if we need to increase our per capita to start a reserve for that, something along those lines, that's something I'd really like to see, because I can tell you it's hard to get people to work, period, anymore. And I feel that we have extremely good staff, and I hate losing people. And it's worth a little bit more to keep people and keep them happy. So that's just something I would like to make sure we keep in mind moving forward. And that's your level all the way down.
And he did make that request, I think, in October, Mr. Crozier, and Chair Taylor and I talked, and I've got some initial, sort of a compensation report. I'll be perfectly honest, it's not my forte in terms of, I've got the information, but I think that may be something that we look at, do we, hire a firm to do a very short one, just to kind of.
Fine, or executive committee or whatever. I know that is not something that you really cherish working with, and that's why I like to keep it on the forefront, so that we keep you all whole.
I appreciate it. And I should have mentioned, there is included in the budget as a 3% increase, but I understand your point too about it needing to be a longer term kind of look.
So you're reducing the office maintenance number from what we have this year, 12 down to 10.
Well, it's interesting. So yeah, so this year, I don't think we spent as much in terms of some of the office maintenance this year as we did. 10 has historically been our number. We don't really have, we did the larger project in terms of our conference room, refurbishment, which barely any of you have seen since it finished just about, April of last year. We don't, other than, doing, potentially looking at a larger project inside the building, which is, replace carpet, paint on the walls and things like that, which probably is needed as a 20-year-old building. Our HVAC systems are, fairly new. So I think we're in pretty good shape.
Those exterior issues, window issues as a result.
We did get those completed last July, August, I think was when Coble came out and fixed the rotting window frame that you noticed. So
well, I guess the unallocated revenues, if some large project came up, would be something that the commission, the executive committee could tap and use.
And I think, this is probably not I don't think it needs a long discussion today, but we have an office that has, all of our offices are filled. We've got, a couple people in open spaces in the office. In looking at the 2 vacant positions that we have, we've got a spot for both of them. One would be sharing an office with someone else, which is a perfectly fine setup based on what they're both doing. But, I think it just it's one of those things you sort of say, okay, what does our, employment level look like in terms of numbers, and what does that mean in terms of space that we need? We're probably 7 years from paying off the entirety of the mortgage, the note on the building that we're in, or the unit that we're in currently now. And I think that's probably something to start thinking about too, is what, not only just paying that off, but what do we do at the end of that? Is this an asset that we look to move and find another place? But I think some of those things are just things to keep on your radar as well.
Is that what happens when we take tours of Brady's new?
I didn't want to tell you, but I'm moving in right here.
Anybody else, any questions or comments for Patrick? I guess we need to have a motion then.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, motion in a second. Any other comments? All in favor of adopting the 2022 budget, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Terrific. All right. I guess we're on to 12B, consideration of a remote electronic participation policy.
This
changing
is,
times.
Yeah. So, and this is asked the chair to have this on the agenda because in order for any one of the commissioners to participate electronically once the state of emergency ends, which is slated for June 30th here, we have to have an adopted remote electronic participation policy. I do want to be clear that it is very narrow in terms of what you can do to qualify to participate electronically in the future. So we actually don't have anybody participating electronically today. I thank you all for being here, and I think that sort of sets up, but it is very, again, very narrow, and it's basically the same as what you would have at your own local government, with the addition of, if your principal residence is more than 60 miles from the meeting location on the day of the meeting, then you can ask to participate electronically. As far as I can tell, unless we're meeting out of the region, the only time that would come into play would be for Mayor Pointer or a Gordonsville representative if the meeting was being held in the Plains or Marshall or somewhere in northern Fauquier, or vice versa. So it's there, but I don't think it's a real easy get out of the meeting free card. So Mr. Curry did point out to me that there should be under Section A, the requirement for notification, a note about if the chair is going to participate electronically, then the chair should notify the vice chair on or before the day of the meeting. So I think adding that in would be the only change I've heard so far.
Motion on that?
We sure do.
I would make that amended motion that you just mentioned, Patrick.
So,
We're all gonna be here, so, anyway, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll all be here, especially if it's, and there's cannolis. Everybody will come for the
Can
cannoli.
always be public.
Gotta have those. Okay, item 12C is a resolution setting the FY 2022 commission meeting schedule. Everybody still good with this meeting time and day? We do the fourth Wednesday, 1 o'clock.
So moved.
you voted to read the second
We have a motion and
Jack's really good with it.
a motion and a second to continue our meetings as is on the fourth Wednesday. So please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. In a related item, I guess, now that we're back to in-person meetings, we need to talk about our annual meeting and getting that back on track. Typically, we have this meeting in late September or early October and rotate between the counties. And this year looks like Orange is the place to be.
Always the place. Oh, I actually have a suggestion of where we could have. We have a new resident of the Lake of the Woods subdivision. And I think it would be the perfect place to hold that. I think he could be the pit master and everything. Okay, do you have anything to say? Yes. No, we would love to host it, and we will come up with an appropriate location.
So yeah, again, we're looking at the late September, early October timeframe, and hopefully there'll be some places open. I know there's a mad dash for everybody to do all the stuff they didn't do last
And
year.
I would actually like to make a request that it be beginning of October, because I will be gone for the month of September. Ted has an employee that is retiring, and I have to spend that month with her. So I would request that we make it early October.
And that's one of the things I look just to see like dates that might be. I know BML has a conference from the 2nd to the 5th annual conference, I think, for BML, so we'll avoid that. I think that might be a Saturday to a Tuesday or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think, and even just timing wise, the more time between now and when we can set it up, probably the better for myself and Monica in terms of coming up with locations. And I would say that we'll certainly reach out to Orange County, Town of Orange, Gordonsville, just in terms of identifying locations and other support in terms of caterers and things like that as well.
So how does that relate to this October 28th?
The annual meeting is, and so, this is a good question. The annual meeting is more of an annual dinner / awards presentation. So we have 2 regional leadership awards that we give. Not so much a business meeting as a, annual report release, celebrate. So the October.
So we can move that to whatever we want it to be in the typically maybe evening, whereas this is the.
That will be the same. That's happening, yeah. But we do try to avoid not having that one too close. So I'm thinking something early October, first week or and then second week. So.
Oh, the second, because of conflict, the second.
Right.
would be
Yeah.
better.
And I think September 30th, I think, is a Thursday maybe, so I would say like maybe October 7th is the first one, so it wouldn't conflict with that if we typically done on a Wednesday or Thursday night also. So.
I would encourage everybody to try and get their councils and boards to come. It's a nice time. I love seeing all of you guys each year, but we're usually the same guy from our councils. And we try and bring our whole board if we can to the annual meeting. So try and bring your boards and councils, encourage them. It's nice to meet the rest of the boards around the region.
And that's I think a point that maybe you consider it in August when we come back with more information is normally for commissioners and the guests you're comped, there's no charge. We've typically had something just so that we're not losing money in terms of on catering costs and things like that. maybe this is a year where we reduce that cost lower and make it even easier, or, whatever that looks like for you all, kind of leave that to your discretion, to kind of think about how you want to do that, just to encourage, additional.
We try and bring our planning commission too, planning commission and councils.
Do we have
to? Well, bring everybody.
And then the last thing I would say, if you have certainly I'll talk with the Orange County and town, Orange and town Gordonsville members, but if there's speaker suggestions, if you have a topic or a specific speaker that you've heard that you think would be good, then that's always welcome as well, so.
All right, wonderful. I think that's everything with the exception of the round table. So, we'll just
I think
around the table.
Already introduced in the past our newest county resident, so I will defer any other comments to him.
I was trying to figure out how I could rope you into working, maybe, but then you said I'm already gonna mind the grill, so maybe you can pour the bill or pour the beer.
There you go.
Okay. Well, the biggest thing going on for us is to kind of wrap up the three large projects that this board has as their sort of Vision 22 capstone projects, or to get us in our new public safety building, which will probably have a ribbon cutting celebration type event for the public and a tour and all that stuff, if we can ever find out when we can get in there, which we're hoping September now. That'll be a year behind schedule. If you ever have to consider the contractor that bid on this project, please do contact us for references. But we think we're going to survive the project. It just took a very long time. Still a lot of things that need to be fixed. Broadband is another of the big projects. We have over 700 residences connected as of today, and over 2,300 homes passed with fiber. So we've got a take rate of approaching 40% of the homes passed have signed up, when we have another 150, 60 people ready to be hooked up within the next 30 days or so. So a lot of that's just scheduling and kind of making it happen. So compared to a year ago, this reality is reality. I mean, we are providing 100 by 100 megabit service. It's full on fiber to the home, and we're thrilled. More work to do, and the timing of some of the new federal supports couldn't be better, because we are positioned to take a big advantage of Commerce Department money, ARPA money, and the new VATI carve out for locality operated entities, which previously was banned. So hopefully we'll be pulling down some more good funds to keep pushing that into more parts of the community. So that's project 2. And then project 3 is our public safety radio system, which is much needed in Orange with our geography, a lot of dead spots. And we had one kind of holdout tower that needed some approvals, but it's now under construction. And so our plan is to begin our testing and probably later this summer, and have things operational again, also, in the fall, September timeframe. So that'll coincide nicely with moving into the public safety building, and hopefully next gen 911, which a number of you are probably on the list somewhere to get, and that might come together in the general timeframe. So we'll be ready for an election, and then we'll have to set a new vision, because they'll have run out of things to do. So.
Oh, that's one thing I did want to say. I am unopposed for my 3rd term, which I swore I'd never do a 3rd term. So.
Mayor Roby, you want to update us?
Okay. Last Wednesday, we met in conjunction with the County of Orange and our Downtown Alliance and representatives from the town with downtown strategies. And we met with stakeholders, business owners. And during that day, we walked the town, we had meetings, we had a lunch discussion group, and then we had a debriefing after that as to how to develop strategies for economic development in the town of Orange and how to use the buildings and bring businesses in. It was a very good meeting, and we will be having a follow-up meeting through a Zoom meeting with Downtown Strategies on August 2nd, and they will present at that time strategies to help us. And it was a very good meeting, good collaborative effort that day. So we're excited about that.
Would you like to add any?
I would say that some of the things that we're working on right now is we have advertisements out for Director of Finance. We've had 3 interviews. I think 2 of them are pretty good so far. And there's about 7 or 8 I haven't been through yet. But I'm not looking to hire for another month or so prior to audit. We'll also, most likely from promotion within, I think it's okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Chief Fenwick will be retiring too, for the you that know him, and that's going to be a very big loss to us. But we're going to promote from within to handle that situation. Some of our big projects is the main one that we got to deal with is replacing up the standpipe. That's going to be a huge issue for us, but we're having the design and the construction documents drawn up now, as well as the other big water project right now is taking care of converting to liquid feed from dry feed. And we're not totally there yet, but pretty close. The wastewater plant will get a new SCADA system. We're looking at putting fiber in the town too. We will beginning to, in the town, we're beginning to show some post-COVID reopenings, especially with the businesses getting back to normal work. However, we're also seeing a huge amount of hiring problems, not just for the localities that talk to us, but even to do our trash or to do our public works. It's just not there. Where hopefully we'll get some relief if the jails open it back up or we could use some of their people.
I'll defer everything to you other than say, I'm excited about our new sports tourism initiative that we have in Colorado. And for me, it's a lot of fun just to see it progress. We're using our complex, our great complex that we have that is being bragged on. As far as the fields and the condition they're in. We have 16 fields in our complex. And I'm happy to say that our board just recently approved to light those fields, which is going to be over a $2 million appropriation. And our board also approved building a rec center for the community at those fields too. So we just had a statewide rugby tournament there several weeks ago, where 50 teams came from all over the state for rugby. Then we just had this past weekend, baseball all-stars regional tournament where there were 70 teams there. And later in the summer, we're slated for another statewide lacrosse tournament and also another rugby tournament. So we don't want to use the fields all the time as far as having them packed every weekend because they're mainly for definitely our community, but the sports tourism is just a great thing for us from an economic development standpoint. And it's fun to be involved with.
Where are they located? This sounds really nice. Where are they located?
You know where Eastern View High School is?
Mm-hmm.
That's where our sports complex is.
Okay.
Right on to the right before you go access.
And how do you promote it? Because I would have been interested in coming to a couple of those things and wasn't aware of it. So how do I kind of keep my eye open for things that are happening?
Social media, local paper, a couple of Parks and Rec webpage. I don't know if you're on social media or not. I'll exchange Facebook. friends with you. I'm familiar on my page.
Okay.
It's going great. So other than that, I'll turn it over to John.
And Chairman Deal covered a lot of what I wanted to say. The only thing I didn't hear him mention is we also have some disc golf events coming to Spillman Park, which is in a different location. So our new Parks and Rec director is really pushing to bring that outside sports tourism in, and that's all good stuff. Like all of you, we've gotten our American Rescue Plan Act funding stuff, and we did receive our first tranche, and probably will target that mostly towards broadband development and a little bit towards water and sewer infrastructure. So it may be a little less scattered than the CARES funding that went here, there, and everywhere. I hope it'll be a little easier to manage and get some really important projects done. With regard to that broadband, we're partnered currently with All Points Broadband. They'll be presenting a plan to the board on the evening of July the 6th. So we'll see what their overall price tag and other plans are, but they undertook a study of the entire county, identified about 4,300 unserved or underserved homes. And the goal is to have fiber to each and every one of those homes within the next 2 to 3 years. So All Points is partnered with Dominion and working closely with REC, and we'll see on July 6th what that looks like, and then hopefully be moving forward with VATI grant and all the other types of grants Ted mentioned. So that's where we are.
And you might want to add the groundbreaking the ceremony for the current.
Good point. Culpeper County is the proud home of CTEC, which is a career and technical education center. It'll be opening on August 5th. We'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony, but they're currently outfitting that building. It's going to be awesome. It's all career and technical. We're partnered in some ways with Germanna Community College. They moved all their automotive equipment from Stafford to Culpeper County. It's now in that school, and they'll utilize the facility in the evenings, but during the day it'll be split shift, half the day for Eastern View High School students to come to it and half the day Culpeper County High School kids that come to it.
Where is this located, John?
It's right next to the Germanna Technology Center. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I guess you will know I'm new. Yeah, I apologize. I should have said something at the beginning of the meeting.
That's Heather Sutphin, I'm Ward 1. I guess next week marks 1 year that I've been on the town council. I find it a little bit difficult to talk about, but I was very good friends with Jerry Wood. So taking his spot means a lot to me. And so I've known Jerry when graduated with his son. So I've known him for a long time. He was my pharmacist, and then he was my ward representative. And then he was like, oh my God, Jerry, what do I do? Because he sat me aside and gave me the good, bad, and ugly when I decided I was going to run. And he was the one that always told me, you have to go with your heart. Don't go against what your gut says. So I told him he's also was my neighbor. So I'm still neighbors with his wife, Colleen. So he did get a call occasionally. I'm like, hey, can I come over? So I certainly miss my friend and my person who was always my sounding board. So taking his spot here is quite an honor. And I hope that I can fill those shoes as greatly as he did, because I know he loved his community and he was very involved. So I look forward to getting to know all of you. I'm going to actually pass it on to my manager with all the what we've got going on, because honestly, I have to give a shout out to her, because this past year with the pandemic, I just thank God we had her here, because she really, really showed us teamwork, leadership, and I can tell by the way everybody works with her that they really respect her. And I've grown to really respect and learned a lot from her over the years. So I look forward to getting to know everybody.
Thank you, Heather. Very sweet. Council has, for the town of Warrenton, authorized a examination of relocating our public works facility. So we had purchased an old telecommunications building, true telephones. So that building doesn't really have adequate heating and cooling, and we've kind of outgrown that space. As you know, we are also an MS4 designated community, so DEQ is also rather active in things that we need to be doing with our facility and things that need to happen. So a lot of that has prompted council to go ahead and authorize a study to examine relocation of that facility. I am working with Fauquier County to see if there's opportunities as it relates to any kind of facility that we could use in conjunction or do as it relates to school buses and other things, but that is something we'll be undertaking in the next year. So I appreciate any contractors or advice on that. I did work through relocating to this building, but it was already here and it was ready to go and it was on the market. So I'm not exactly sure where to start on the public works question and how all of that works. So I'll look at the engineering side of the table and also anything you guys want to send me that you've done before. I would really appreciate that. Right now, council is working through the Broadview project. You might be aware that probably started, I think, prior to my high school graduation. And so it's been going on for quite some time. Nobody on staff was here when the project started. No one on council was here when the project started. So VDOT told us about, I think I told you all about a month ago that they needed an additional $2 million. And until we agreed to $2 million, they were stopping the project, not proceeding or doing any additional work until we authorized an additional $2 million. I told them I was not even putting it on the agenda, that they needed to go back and examine some value engineering and come back with a more reasonable number. So we are working through that with them, and council is taking one-on-one meetings with Ms. Harris and myself to answer questions, go through the budget, go through that project and some of the things that we can do there. We are currently interviewing for a budget manager, which is a new position that council had authorized for us, as well as we just recently hired a procurement officer. So those are two positions that we desperately needed when we were administering the CARES Act and going through things. So I'm looking forward to having those positions filled. Council is also examining and currently under study on both a rate study for utilities as well as a septic remediation program. So we're looking at that, policies, and well as the financial impact. Council's also in the final stages of forming a housing committee. So the presentation today is very timely, and I have been asking them to kind of hold off and see what the region is doing and make sure that we collaborate regionally, because housing is just really a nationwide issue. Our mixed use ordinance went before Planning Commission last month. They held off another 30 days, and you might have seen it in the paper, but Amazon is looking at a 200,000 square foot data center here in Warrenton. And that was on the Planning Commission agenda last month as well. So really excited to hear about downtown strategies. I started with them as retail strategies a few years back, and they did amazing work for us. I was so impressed with their technology. My background's economic development. And so working with them to still be learning things that I didn't know and exposed to things and just things I didn't know about Warrenton. They were able to show me and teach me. So I loved working with them. I called them and I was like, you told me you didn't do anything for downtown at all. And they were like, well, we didn't. And then we hired this specialist and we're trying to expand it. So I know it's a new area. We had used retail strategies as a way to counter some of the money we gave to the downtown economic development Main Street program as something we did for the bypasses. And they were a very effective tool for us. So we've been very helpful. And then Paul picked up that contract to go countywide. So I'm really excited for you guys.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
And then on the SCADA stuff, we did that. I don't know if you saw that SCADA was the basis of the pipeline hack. So we are now going back and also spending some of our CARES Act and potentially ARP, ARPA funding, I'm not sure what we're saying yet, to harden that because it qualifies. But we were definitely exposed based on what the FBI had sent us. So with every new technology comes a new challenge. So that is what I have going on here in Warrenton right now. And I really am so thankful to have you guys here for the day. And appreciate you making the drive and those that joined me on the walking tour. It's nice to see you all in person again, and I'm excited to get back to this next normal. So thank you.
In Fauquier, my board worked with the school board to provide money for a 5% school raise on July 1st, 3% to our employees, with a promise by the board to look at to see whether they can up that to 5% once we get our reassessment, general reassessment numbers in. We're closing our vaccine center at the end of the month. The numbers have just dropped, and the availability through doctors' offices and pharmacies is such that we don't need to continue to operate that clinic at this particular point. We'll probably do pop-up clinics where warranted. We're advertising for a new economic development director. We went through one round. We didn't particularly like what we got, so we're back out again. We've partnered with the Lord Fairfax Community College Foundation. We've given them an additional 12 acres of land, bringing the county's total donation to them to 62 acres. They've agreed on that 12 acres of land to construct and have into use by the 2022 fall semester a trades lab and educational center for trades. So we're looking forward to that going forward, and currently in the beginning discussions, hopefully with the town, about potentially relocating our health center to another site. We've begun to outgrow it, which is a great thing, and we're also working with a couple other local government entities to potentially add them to our health clinic also. So that's what's happening here in Fauquier right now.
Well, in the town, Rockwater Park, we just completed this year a new playground. Governor finally allowed us to open our splash pad that we had completed just fairly soon before COVID shut it down. It's pretty much exceeding capacity at this point. We knew that was coming, so we started working on an additional entrance to the park and a parking lot. That's essentially complete. We have some striping and a few minor things to put on that before we can open that back up. A lot of utility work. We've about $9 million worth of projects now between procurement and starting the design phase of those, trying to get those designs done, to get ahead of the rush on contractor work, with all this ARPA money flowing. We started a feasibility study for our potential aquatic center. And after we look at that, we'll see where we go with that. And that kind of ties to a pedestrian bridge project from the depot across Norfolk Southern, and additional parking for the downtown. And that opens up some potential infill development sites if we make that happen. So we're working on all of those. Have a retreat scheduled for July 1st with council to talk about all the ARPA money and what they may want to do with what residuals are left over after we get done with a bunch of utility work that we just have to do. And that's pretty much it that I can think of.
We just have a couple of things that are new. I've told you about other things in the past. One, in the past couple of weeks, we had a new restaurant open up that's just been jammed the whole month. It's really popular, Champion Ice House Brewery. And in partnership with the brewery, Craig Hartman of Barbecue Exchange fame is doing fried chicken there, which has been received greatly. And so it has stayed packed. And the thing we're working on right now, we've finished the old depot, the 1840 depot. And so we're looking forward to how that'll be utilized. And, it's a shame, the nice depots, the train depots, the fancy ones, we lost ours a number of years ago. So this one goes back into the days of like the small towns. It looks more like a warehouse where it might just have a ticket office and you have a bench out front, The main thing was storage, and it just had a ticket office. So this isn't your typical, we had a beautiful station. A really neat station because our station was located in a Y and we had two main lines coming through. So one ran down one side of the station, and one ran down the other side of the station. When you were inside, it was Washington this way and Richmond this way, and you went out each side of the building. So it's really kind of a unique building, but we lost it. But anyway, so we finished the depot building of 1840. That's the thing that went up as soon as the tracks came to Gordonsville. So we're working on the airport now, and we were fortunate enough to get a combination of loans, grants for almost 2 million, about 1.8, 1.9. We're going to totally renovate the runways. We're going to tear them down to the base and level and regrade the runway and widen it about 50%. So it'll be a lot wider, safer. And we're going to redo all the areas around the runway, the different taxiways and aprons and things like that. So we're looking forward to that. And in the last month, we've renovated our 1912 hangar, the Langley hangar. It was the initial hangars that were done in the earliest days of aviation in the country at Langley. And when they upgraded about in the 30s, about 1930, we grabbed one of the earliest hangars of theirs, and it's still there. So we've got one of the oldest hangars in the country at the Gordonsville Airport, which is kind of neat. But it was in bad shape, and we had a lot of work done on it, and then painted it in the last month. And we'll do the runway work. And so it's a nice complement to Orange. Ayers is close to the industrial park, close to Klockner, close to the tourism areas like Montpelier, even Monticello. It's nice to fly into Gordonsville, even from Monticello or Keswick Hall or Keswick Vineyards. And so, the bigger airports, not like it's Dulles, but Charlottesville still, once you get a commercial schedule, it's not as easy to fly in and out on a single, so it is very nice for the western end of Orange, near the industrial areas, and also tying into Air Mall and Louisa and other areas. So we're fortunate to get that. That's a culmination for me of almost 20 years of work. The previous director of aviation acted like he liked me a whole lot and loved Gordonsville, but I couldn't get him on board. And the new executive director, I worked with him at VML for Mark Flynn for 20 years. And that was so nice because now he seems to support the venture. And we got our almost $2 million grant. So it is a valid, good project. It's not who you know. But daggone, it was good that he was a pro, because I worked on the other guy for 20 years and didn't get anywhere. But anyway, so it's going to be really nice. We're going to have top notch, and at that point, I hope to double the hangars and get a new fuel farm. But it's hard to do that when you've got a runway that the cracks are so wide, the airplanes are falling down the cracks. So runway first, and then everything else. So onward and upward.
Well, we don't have anything as sexy as airports or new buildings.
It is
or anything
sexy,
like that.
very sexy.
We do have some successes to talk about from Madison. We're finishing up the renovation of the county office building complex. Hope to have that done by July 6th, at which point maybe the paint will be on the walls and the carpet will be on the floor, so I could show it off on my last day in the county. It's going to be delivered a month late. Ted, I've got a suggestion. When you set these schedules, maybe you should look at setting reasonable schedules. Madison's been working on this for 40 years. So if a month late over 40 years sounds good to me. We're suffering a turnover in staff in Madison, if you haven't heard, but that's, I think the board's about on top of that. But then the next wave is we've got this election coming, and we're going to get at least 2 new board members in Madison. And that will be a difficult thing for Madison to absorb, but that's just the way it is. We've scheduled the revolution, as it were, there. Last night, the board rescinded the emergency declaration to be concurrent with the governor's suspension of that period. The attitude is that we haven't won the war, but we are going to win the war, and now we're going to focus on winning the peace. So we're looking forward to the next things on that. So if everything comes to pass,
Good luck with that.
Yes, ma'am.
So the county that's proud to not have a stoplight, just listening to all this, I'm like, wow, your job's so easy. We are.
We also don't have staff.
That's true. Proud that our ladies softball team from the high school is on the way to the Region 1B championships. So hopefully they will bring back the trophy and the game Thursday night. I think it would be at Rappahannock County. So excited for them. We do have a broadband authority, and that is leaps and bounds for Rappahannock County. Proud of that. And we just sent out an RFI to about 12 different ISPs this morning. I'm hoping we can find a good partner for Rappahannock County to get value funding grants and lots of money out there. I want to take advantage of it for our county. And the other thing that we just recently did, we've had an agreement with Warren County with their fire and rescue automatic aid, and our Chester Gap Company 9 has an agreement now with Warren that we have a paid EMT, basic life support, and they just agreed with us to jump it up to have an ALS provider there as well. And those are the first two paid rescue people in Rappahannock County. But it's a mutual agreement with Warren County. They're paying half, we're paying half, and I think that's a great way to do it and an affordable way to do it for Rappahannock County.
In the opposite corner, can listen up on that. We have adjacencies with you.
Yes.
Board's poised to make some zoning ordinance changes relative to short towers, possibly switching those over to administrative. State code requires us to do that for 50 feet and under if they're a long utility, but this would be 80 feet and shorter anywhere. Thinking that may help broadband and also public safety if we need it to be approved administratively. They're also getting ready to potentially adopt a solar ordinance, which in its current form is pretty restrictive. We'll see where that goes. It could be challenged, but a challenge to the ordinance would delay an application, I suppose, which I think is potentially be in the purpose. Radio systems up here, Culpeper and Rappahannock have suffered through many, many lessons with your current vendor, and we are still working through many teething problems. Let us know if there's something that we can do to help you. But once we're all with that vendor, then we should get together and use our leverage with the vendor. And then I'll just add the declaration of local emergency. The board is poised to end that at the July 7th meeting, as well as repeal our continuity of government ordinance. We will be post-pandemic in Rappahannock. And we're not building anything. Nobody else is allowed to build anything.
I don't really have anything to add to what Mr. Hively said, but I did want to share that I love this part of the meeting and hearing what's going on with everybody. And it's very clear that post-pandemic, everybody's got a lot of stuff happening. And I mean, who knew that there would be this kind of money for all of us to deal with at this time? I mean, it was
especially you towns. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
Pandemic was so bad, and just being able to get through it and come out of it, and then have something to work with to get everything back on track is wonderful. And it's again awesome to be here with everybody, and thank you again for the room space.
It is. And I was going to say when it came around to me, but I want to mention Jerry again. He was a good friend of ours while he was here for a few years. And I've been for 40 years. It's really funny. I don't care where the region comes up. It seems like if it's an award or if it's something, I knew that guy forever. Of all the thousands of people I don't know in each county, I seem to know the person we're talking about. And I've known Jerry for about 40 years. And I was working with this pharmacy back in the early 80s and up through the 90s, I guess. So I'd just like to say here to
Jerry's memory, and I'll always think fondly of him working on this board.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Chris for the park. I've seen all my friends going there, so we might be contributing to your capacity issues. Everybody's loving it. It's
As
great.
long as they stop in the downtown and
Yeah.
buy a meal, we're all happy.
We did use retail strategies to geofence our parks as well, because I wanted to use that and leverage with meetings with Paul's, see how many were county residents versus town residents. So they'll geofence your parks as well and tell you where people are coming from and the average age and everything as well. So it's really helpful for the economic development around parks. So it's a nice park, it really is.
Thanks for your comments about Jerry. He was my buddy at the corner of the table.
Right, he
Kept
was.
me, and I mean,
He's great.
I just really adored him. So,
Yeah.
and I think he'd be real excited that we came out here for this meeting today. So that's terrific. Okay, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all.